Hey guys, it is Tuesday, December 5th, and perfect timing. We're going to have the CEO of DRIO Health, DRIO, here with us in just a couple minutes. Look at the timing of this. Look at the stock. Perfectly hit our target. We had the right interpretation on ER day. We're buying the stock at like 75 cents, and then we gave you another alert at $1.22 last week on the technical breakout, on the catalyst that they've been putting out there with the new contracts, on hopefully the Aetna launch that's coming up in Q1. And we gave you a target of a near-term, absolutely unbelievable. So now we're going to check in with the CEO to learn more, to see if we can hopefully break this resistance and head on higher. So the man himself, Erez Raphael, here he is. Erez, how you doing?
Hi, Ben. Thanks for inviting me.
Good to see you, man. It's been a tough couple years for microcaps, for DRIO. To be honest with you, we haven't been interviewing CEOs in a while because of market conditions, and things are looking better for your stock. Part of it might have to do with the macroeconomics and the lower interest rates and everything. So, you know what? Before we dig into specifics with your company, I'm wondering if you can speak to the macroeconomic situation, what you're hearing, what you're seeing on your ends in terms of, you know, the whole thing about like small companies like yours that get punished so badly. It's because what if they need to raise money, right? And then the credit conditions are really tight, and that's what leads to like small companies getting demolished. So what's your take on the macro economy now and credit availability and interest rates, and how's that change your outlook for the valuation of your company? If you can speak to that a little bit.
Yes, absolutely. So, you know, we are entrepreneurs, and we want to build companies and make a change in the healthcare industry. So it's very depressing to see the stock going from like mid 20 to less than $1, and you know we were touching like 68 cents. So it's not easy to operate in an environment.
I was
like
buying that day. I bought at 75 cents.
Oh, good for you. So it's not easy, and as you know, I'm a very, very big shareholder. They didn't sell at 25 or 20 or whatever, because I know what we are trying to build here and what are the value that we are trying to provide to our patients and members. So it's a bit funny that we were like $21 stock when we didn't have Sanofi and Aetna and Blue Shields of California and other big accounts that we have. And when we got all of them, eventually we are ending up with 68 cents per share. So I think that the way to look at it, and there are people that are much smarter than me, like Buffett and others, that were talking about Mr. Market and how crazy is Mr. Market. I don't think that the situation is disconnected from the reality, because to your point, the interest rate environment changed a lot of things for microcap, and eventually a lot of microcap were crashed, and a lot of them cannot survive this environment. I think that we were listening to the market. We did some significant changes on our cost structure in terms of OPEX. We slowed down the B2C and so on. So I think that from a from an operation standpoint, we have been responsive to the market in a way that we can respond to this environment, which is something that I believe eventually will help us to go through this period. And then once the market is getting back to a normal situation, ideally we're going to get to the same levels that we have been in a few years ago. So I think that if I would think about our fundamentals, we have the right platform for the right market at the right time. And I think that from a macro perspective, we could not just ignore the macro perspective, and we responded on time in terms of cutting the OPEX and improving the financial profile so we can extend runway. So I think that unlike others, we were responding to the situation and tried to do the best given the circumstances. We need to remember that we are still a company that is like creating a business that doesn't really exist in healthcare. We are doing a big revolution in healthcare, and we are trying to create a SaaS model in a very healthcare professional-centric environment when we are trying to create a consumer-centric environment. And that's something that is not easy. There are a lot of ups and downs, but on the overall path, we are going to the right direction, and I'm confident now more than ever that we are heading in the right direction.
Okay, great. Sounds good. All right, got another big picture kind of question for you before getting to the specifics. I think you can agree at this point, looking back a few years, in the last few years, that the revenue probably missed the ramp of the revenue probably missed your own expectations, and or path to profitably, whatever it is, it certainly seems delayed at this point. I think you can agree to that. I'm wondering if you can just look back over the past few years and speak to what you expected over the last few years. And are those issues now resolved, or are they still ongoing, whatever caused those delays?
Yeah. So yes, I agree with you that the way that we were seeing the ramp up of the clients that we have signed on, we have seen a ramp up that is faster than what we anticipated. And also in terms of the B2C, we wanted to stay with relatively high revenue on the B2C, which is something that we had to slow down due to the market environment and the cost of capital, in order to make sure that we are running a very healthy financial profile. So on the B2C, because of the economic environment, we decided to slow it down. The B2B was not ramping in the velocity that we wanted it to ramp. And, I don't want to blame the macro environment or others, but I think that the nature of the beast is very different in terms of being able to anticipate commercial ramp up. And, we can talk about the famous example of Aetna that was supposed to go live 7/1, and eventually it was postponed to 1/1 next year, which is something that made an impact. We have seen it happening also with other big accounts, and the nature of the beast is that eventually once you are winning a health plan, and we won Blue Shields of California for the hypertension, and there are some, I wouldn't call it delays, but I will call it ramp up that is relatively slow because of the access to the members and because of how quickly the health plan is willing to put the platform out, and a lot of things are not depending on us. So we were ready on time, and that's the nature of the beast. The health plans have their own timeline, and this is something that we should in the future anticipate better. I think that when I'm talking with other companies, other colleagues, and when I'm talking with my top investors, big investors that are holding like 40% of the company, and looking into other small medical devices companies and digital health companies and others, I think that this slowdown is happening also due to the macro environment. If you look into Aetna, they had a very big change in their infrastructure. If you look into Sanofi also had a very big change in their infrastructure. So I think that we are operating in an environment where there are big vectors and waves that are happening in the market that are also impacting the velocity of the loan. So could we expect and plan better in the future? Probably yes. Do we control everything? The answer is no. And I think that maybe the takeaway that we should have here is to what extent we want to provide, I don't know, guidance or some anticipation to the market. I think that for the size of the company, it's not a good idea to put everything on the table and to be super accurate in terms of the anticipation that we want to, or the forecast that we want to put out there. Formally, we're not providing guidance. I think that given these specific circumstances, there are a lot of positive things that are happening and should build the confidence of the investors. I don't know that there are too many companies in the world that managed to hand over the data to Sanofi, that handed it over to a company called Symphony, that cross-checked it with claims data and are showing that we are really saving money and so on. So investors chose to ignore a lot of the fundamentals that were generated, and the combination of the macro environment together with our miss created a very big pressure on the share price in a way that it's like doesn't make sense to me, to be honest.
Okay, all right, that's really helpful. So basically, the start times, something out of your control. You didn't have visibility into these delays, and also organizational changes, because maybe due to the macroeconomics situation over at Aetna and Sanofi. What about the conversion rates? The rates of what percent of users are actually going to use it? Have those been different than what you expected?
In terms of the ability to manage members and retain them on the platform, we still have good numbers, and here everything is like we anticipated because we have a lot of experience from the direct-to-consumer market.
Mm-hmm.
And on the direct-to-consumer market, we tested everything and it's working. I think that there are two, in order to get to dollars, there are two stages that we need to go, three stages that we need to go through. One, we need to get an account signed. Number two, we need that the account will launch the platform, and then we need to enroll members to the platform. So when it comes to employers, we are controlling the whole three in a very good way because these kind of accounts are very predictable. When it comes to health plans like the Blues and Aetna, that's something that is the whole three stages is something that depends on the client, and this is something that is very hard to anticipate. So it really depends on the type of the client.
Okay, all right. So I do want to get to those. You had a couple employer contracts, November 27th and December 5th today. So I wanted to ask about those. But first, there's a good lead in this discussion to Aetna. And part of the reason I asked about, what did he learn from the delays the last couple of years? I want to see if, whatever kind of commentary you give on Aetna going forward, if we can now rely on that, right? The last I heard, I think, was on the conference call of the earnings, where you said Aetna's on schedule for January 1st, and it's even something, I think Rick was saying, something even bigger than before. It's now December 5th. What can you tell us about this Aetna? Is it actually going to launch finally in January?
The answer is yes. It's going to launch.
The answer is yes.
Yes, it's going to launch, and the way that this deal is working is that it's an ASO deal, which means that we are generating revenue as long as Aetna are selling the platform to employers, and we already know what are the first 7 or even 8 by now employers that are going to enroll to the platform. It's not going to jump to $30 million in revenue overnight, and we need to get Aetna to get the employers to the platform. So now, because we are working closely with Aetna and because our sales team is working closely with them in order to sell it into the employers community, we know who are the first 7-8 names that are going to get on the platform Q1, more precisely in January. So we're going to start and see this account generating revenue. Rick's point about expanding is that Aetna asked us for additional portion of the platform, the behavioral health platform, some CBT portion that they added to the overall offering, which is something that can add another $1.5 to $2 million to our revenues from Aetna. And this is something that they are expanded. So I think that the good news is that we know who are the employers that are going to touch the platform 1-1. We know that they expanded the offering with us to additional small project, couple of millions. And now we need to see that they can bring more employers and ramp it up also in Q2, 3, and 4 and moving forward. And also, I mean, as I mentioned in the Investor Day, we have the land and expand strategy. And we want to see that big accounts that are signing up on one condition are going to expand to other conditions. So just to remind you, the deal that we have at the moment with Aetna is only for the behavioral health. It's not for the metabolic, and we want to be able to expand it into additional conditions. So that's there are a lot of ways to get more contracts and to ramp up the revenues, given the fact that we are multi-condition and given the fact that we are building very, very good relationship with our clients, and we are performing for those that are already in production.
Okay, when you say January launch, does that mean the end consumer is going to be using it in January, or that means the employers will start like
then the end consumer should start and utilize it in January.
That's great. I'm very excited to hear that. And will there be a press release from Aetna, or are you allowed to speak to that?
So you know what, we talked about the regional health plan that signed with us. Eventually, they decided to publish it last week. So usually, health plans are controlling their own life cycle. Given the fact that they're going to launch it, I have a very, very high confidence that they will put an announcement that is communicating with the world that they have this Mind Companion platform that is going to launch to the market. So I think that the answer is yes. I don't control the date, and I don't control the chances that it will happen, but I think that the probability is very, very high that they will do it.
Okay. All right. So you threw out a couple numbers which were consistent with what you first told the street when you signed this contract, that the idea is to ramp this up to 30 million over a couple of years. And I think you had previously said that the idea is to get to 10 million within the first year. Is that right? Is that my correct understanding?
I don't know that. I don't know at the moment that that's going to be the number. It's very hard to predict. It depends on the velocity, on how quickly we're going to get their employers to the platform, and I think that it's very hard to predict that that's going to be the number.
So then let's move the conversation on to the break-even rate for your company. I think you previously said like around 55 million annual recurring revenue, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
I think that you are mistaken. We were very consistent in our earning calls, and we were talking about somewhere between 75 to 80 million dollars. That's the cash flow positive point. This is what we communicated multiple times, including in our earnings. We might be in a position that we can accelerate it and do it in a lower revenues. We need to see how things are playing on our side, but we are looking for ways to be more aggressive in the way that we are ramping up the revenue and hitting the cash flow positive point. But at the moment, the number that we are looking into is 75 to 80 million, and we are very consistent here for the last 4 or 5 quarters.
Okay, I must have misunderstood something. Okay, so 75 to 80. So then where's that leave us with, I guess, you're in good, I don't know, what can you tell us about your cash level and your plan to flip to profitability and how that's going to be funded to be able to get to that profitability point?
So I'm trying and I'm insisting not to provide guidance.
Okay.
You always take me there.
No, I'm not asking for guidance. I just want to know what can I just want to know what your plan is to fund the company to profitability, because it looks like the cash on hand probably not going to be enough. So is that Sanofi, or I don't know, just whatever you can say, because that's the number one concern right now of all microcap investors is we don't want to be diluted by some sort of offering in the open market and you're selling warrants and it's just highly dilutive. Like that's what everyone's afraid of. Is there
You
anything?
know me for a while. How many times since you know me, how many times I was selling warrants?
You did great with that. No, you did. I
Zero.
gotta be. That's one of the reasons I like your company. Yeah.
So don't worry about warrants. So let's put it this way. We ended the quarter with $44 million in cash. This is how we ended Q3. The way that we are looking into our OPEX and into our losses and the gross margins, and if you are looking year over year, you're going to see a consistent improvement in all the parameters. OPEX was down from $58 million to $44 million in 58 in 21 to around 44 in 2023, and it's going to be somewhere around $36 to $37 million next year. The gross margins are going toward the target of the 70+% for the core business of B2B2C. We're already there. Mm-hmm. And the losses was down by more than 65-70%. So this is a very long way to say that we keep improving our financial profile and the losses. So this year, losses are in the ranges of like 28 million. Next year, we want to cut it by half. So the $44 million is not something that we are concerned about because it gives us a runway that is deep into 2025, and we need to see how we're gonna fund the company given the strategic relationships that we have, including Sanofi, mm-hmm. and how we are ramping up the revenues, and we are going to the next level in terms of the revenues of the company and eventually the value of the company. So we're not going to go out there and do something crazy in the public market that will crash the stock. That's not the plan. And we have, as soon as we took the burn rate down, and we have a path to keep reducing it next year, I think that the runway is extending. And with the cash that we have, we should know how to operate in the next few quarters, and then we'll see how we want to operate given the strategic alternatives that we have. Obviously, we prioritize the strategic alternatives first over doing something crazy in the market.
Okay, great. Is there, like, I'm surprised that nothing's been announced with Sanofi yet, especially with all this great data that's been coming out. You talked about it a little bit earlier, you know, with the cost savings. Really nice data, I guess, in October, I see in your press releases here. So how come that hasn't happened yet? Really surprising to me, because you guys did hint about this very early on when you first got into the relationship with Sanofi. On multiple occasions, you'd kind of become an equity holder. Is that still on the table, or a little surprised that with that good data coming out, the stock price as low as it is, like you'd think that they would want to take advantage of that and get in, you know, at these times?
Sanofi are not retail investors. They don't give a shit if it's $1 or $5 or $4 or $8. They are looking into what's going to promote their business and whether DRIO is going to promote their business. So I don't think that there is price sensitivity there. They're not operating as a fund, and they're not looking to make profits out of a stock because they're not buying and selling. So I think that the way to look at it is how they're running their business, what is happening inside their business, and what is their objectives. And I can tell you that the relationship are very, very good, and I believe that we're going to take the relationship to the next level. The timeline when it comes to big companies, especially pharma, the timeline is very, very hard to predict. And they're also going through ups and downs, and those that are following on what's happening in the market knows what was happening with Sanofi in the last few months, and they are managing their priorities the way that they are managing it. It doesn't mean that the relationship with them is not good. It doesn't mean that they are not believing in our business and they're not going to support us in the future. Okay. We have a very good relationship, business and also personal relationship, that I believe that eventually will be reflected in the way that the two companies are operating together in the future. one of the things that we stated also in the investor day, and I think that I don't know why, but investors ignored, is the whole GLP-1 revolution, which is something that the press release from today and also the press release that we put last week showed that the platform is getting involved. You talked about macro, and you talked about macro on the interest rate, and there is a macro that we can talk about the war in Israel, and there is a macro that we can talk about that related to the GLP-1, because a lot of companies that are doing diabetes and so on were punished. I think that
yeah, well, why don't we do that? Talk about the GLP-1. I was actually intending on asking you. It was in the press release today. Real quickly, if you can speak to how does that product work? So GLP-1, that's someone they're taking the injection and what? There's like a companion app or something through your app that helps them manage that, or how's that
one
work?
of the developments that we did together with Sanofi on top of our platform is to have a medication adherence capabilities and medication cabinet and so on. When it comes to GLP-1, there are a few concerns, a few things that you need to manage. Number one, who should get the medication or this kind of injection, because not everyone can get it, and you should give it to those that will provide the best results given the circumstances. Then once you're giving it to someone, for how long he's going to use it, how he's going to onboard on the drug, and how he's going to offboard of the drug. And one of the things that we have seen through studies and so on is that the impact is very significant, but there is a big concern for how long you need to carry this drug, and once you stop, whether you're going to get back to square one and again the weight that the patient used to have before he started to use the drug. So to whom the drug should be given, how you're going to drive a behavioral change alongside the drug in a way that once you're offboarding the drug, you can retain the change that the drug has made. And that's everything that can be achieved with the digital capabilities, from the navigation to the behavioral change and eventually to the offboarding of the drug. And we are expanding our platform in order to support it. I think that from a macro perspective, the market went, short or bearish on everything that is touching diabetes and everything that is related to cardiometabolic. It doesn't make sense because actually we are supporting this whole revolution, and I think that this is something that will drive our revenue forward and not the other way around. So it doesn't make sense, and I think that the last two press releases should give some sense to investors that we are part of this wave and we are not fighting this wave.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, great. Also, the last two press releases, they both said national employer. Is there any way you can quantify? I know you can't do it with a number, but like just qualitatively, how big are these contracts?
It's national employers that each of them is like hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Oh, hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yes.
Okay. All right, cool. You mentioned last week, you said there was an insurance plan that did a press release. I missed that. What was that you were talking about?
So last week, the Blue Shields of California published that they are launching a new digital platform, and they are managing hypertension, and they mentioned DRIO as their vendor for this launch. So it was done. It's a press release that was done by the health plan, and that's how this is how it works. So we were not part of this press release. We didn't contribute anything. They were just putting a press release that is talking about their platform, and they mention us as the main vendor.
Okay, I'll see. I think I don't know. Was I asleep that day? I think I saw it, but it feels like it was in my dream. I have to go check that. That's probably
yes, it was a big. I mean, I got a lot of phone calls from investors and congratulations. I think it's a big deal when a Blue is mentioning a relatively small company.
Yeah, so and it'll be a big deal. It will also be.
People are starting to realize what we are doing here.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. Sorry, I missed that. All right. I wanted to try to keep this within 30 minutes. So just two quick additional questions and we'll wrap it up. First, you had mentioned to me when I first kind of met you, it was it was a quarter or two. It was after the whole reason I got into this is because Teladoc acquisition of Livongo, when the market was like so hot, right? And I'm like, oh my gosh, Dario is going to be the next Livongo, and they're going to sell themselves for $1 billion or whatever it is. Now it's been a few years later, and I'm wondering if you can kind of speak to what your goal is for this company. Are you looking to sell this? Are you looking, what kind of valuation is your goal to sell it at? Has anything changed? Because now looking back, the market was just crazy. There was so much free money in the market and the valuations are crazy. I don't think we'll get back to those kind of valuations. So if you can give me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I think that the market was very high back then, and the market is very pessimistic now. And I think that it doesn't make sense, that the market is going from being greedy to being very skeptic in a very quick time. But the reality for someone that is building a business, and I'm doing digital health for 10 years, and I've seen the market going from, I would call it digital health 1.0, and then 2.0, and now I think we are going to 3.0. That's the way that I envision the whole transformation. So I think that Livongo did a very good job educating the market that there is also consumer-centric patient management that is needed. But I think that from a business model and from a real value to payers, there is a lot that need to be done. And I think that once companies are going to do that in a good way with a good technology, they should generate a value of billions of dollars. So I think that this is something that I'm always telling investors. We are a technology company that operates in the healthcare industry, and exactly like at the .com that was exploded, and we have seen companies that went to billions of dollars and then to zero, and it took like a few more years to get to the same valuation and above. I think that also here we're going to see this phenomena happening, and eventually companies that will know how to improve clinical outcomes in a digital way will create a value of billions of dollars. So I don't think that the peak that we have seen then will not return. I don't know if it's going to be returned in 2 years or in 7 years or in 10 years, but definitely looking 10 years forward, healthcare is going to be much more consumer-centric and much more digital and much more value-based. I think that Sanofi understands it. I think that the entire market understands it, and I'm here to build the best technology to be there. And I'm very persistent, and I'm not going to give up, and it will get there. And the question is whether investors are going to be patient enough to be part of this success. It's easy to look into a 68-cent stock and to say, hey, it's going to go to zero, and Dario is going to go bankrupt. But when you think about it realistically, there is a lot of value that have been created here, and smart people knows how to see that and avoid all these emotions that investors are getting into when they see a crisis. And we're going to get back to where we have been. I have no doubt about it.
All right, very good. And last question, speaking of crises, unfortunately with the war that's kicked off October 7th, I did contact you privately, and I passed on those, you gave me some data in terms of what percent of the your workforce is in India and different places, and in terms of key employees that are impacted. I sent that message over in case anyone was worried about that. So if you can give us anything you want to mention about the war and how it's impacting you and your company, and also how investors should be concerned or not about it.
So I'll start with the general statement about the stability of the company. The company have like 38% of the resources operating from Israel. The rest are between US and India. And in terms of disruption to the business, the impact is zero in terms of disrupting the business. I mean, we have software developers that are delivering the software on time. We're going to launch on time Aetna, and I don't see any risk to the business. So I think that we're operating in a very stable kind of circumstances because of the offshoring and because we have resources out of Israel as well. All the commercial and all the relationship with the clients, everything is being done from the US, and some of the Israeli employees are also operating from the US, including myself, with the majority of my time. On a more personal aspect, we had like 2 employees that were affected by this October 7. Family members of employees had been kidnapped, and exactly a week ago, all of them have been released.
Oh, wow.
So this was and maybe it's a karma, because exactly in the same that they were released, the stock started to perform.
Okay.
Maybe.
Okay.
So it was a very big concern for employees and management and so on. And I'm happy that we are post that, and eventually I think that things will be better in the future. We are very optimistic.
Very good. Thank you, Erez. Only good things to come for yourself and your company and your country. Good luck with everything. We are back in the stock. I'm back in it personally in a big way, and I'm monitoring your success. So good luck with everything, Erez.
Thank you so much, Ben, for inviting me. I appreciate it.
All right. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.